Okay, at this point, I want to work on placing collectibles around the ball so that when we move the ball around, it will collect them. So what we'll do is this. First of all, let me zoom out. So on my trackpad, I'm using two fingers and tracking down. I think you would simply use your wheel on your mouse to achieve the same effect, basically zooming in, zooming out here. And why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and click Create in the Hierarchy tab. And I click Create, and there's 3D Object, and I'm going to create a cube. You see where it places the cube. I can zoom in a little bit on that. Oh, by the way, I can also press F on the keyboard, and that's going to focus in on that particular cube. Now, the one thing that I want to make sure that you understand is when you are entering objects, make sure that they are located at their origin, and the way that you can do that is you can click on this gear in the inspector transform. You'll see over here where it says reset. Click on reset, and that just makes sure that it's placed at its origin. Let me give you a demonstration of what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and move this thing directly away from the origin. As you can see here, the z-axis has been changed. I can change all the other axes as well, something like that perhaps. Alright, so then with the cube selected, I can click on that little gear, click reset, and you see what happens. It takes it right back to its origin. Alright, now I want to work on the cube by itself. The player, the sphere, is in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select player, and then if I click this guy over here, so that tells me if whether or not this thing is activated or not. So if I click the checkbox, notice how it's no longer activated. We haven't deleted it, we've just simply deactivated it, so that way we can focus in on the cube and make our adjustments. Okay, at this point I want to rename our cube. So I'm going to select it once over here in the hierarchy. I'm going to select it again, and now it gives me the opportunity to rename it. I'm going to call this guy Pickup. Press enter. I don't like where this thing is located. Looks like it's half into the ground, half out of the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise it up a little bit. Over here in the transform and the inspector, in the transform area for position, I want you to type in 0.5. I'll press tab or enter. So it raises it up. That's good. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the scale to make it a little bit smaller. So I'll type in 0.5, tab, 0.5, tab, 0.5, tab. Alright, that's nice. So we've lifted it up, we've renamed it, and also resized it. The next thing we're going to work on is rotating it. To change the rotation of our pickup object, once again over here in the inspector in the transform area where it says rotation, I want you to type 45, tab, 45, tab, 45, tab. And you can see the effect that it has on our object. It looks like it's standing on its corner. Alright, let's run the game to see what happens. Actually, I can click on the game tab to see what it looks like, but let's run it to see what is actually going to be displayed when the user plays this game. At this point, nothing is displayed. You'll recall that the player is not active, that's why we don't see the sphere. And for the pickup, we basically just have this cube. So let's make this guy a little bit more attractive. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this thing spin so that the sphere basically is going to be traveling around trying to capture these spinning cubes. Alright, let me get out of this run mode, or game run mode, and so I'm just going to click that guy. And I want to make sure that I'm selecting the pickup because I want to make it so that there is a script affecting the pickup, namely spinning it around. Well, to do that, I'm going to select Add Component. So again, make sure that pickup is selected graphically. You see that's the case. I'm going to click on Add Component, and what I want to do is I want to add a script. So I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. You see over here it says New Script. I'm going to tap on that, and now I have to type in whatever the name of the script is. Let's call this guy Rotator. So Rotator. And over here it says Create and Add. So I'm going to click over here. Alright, so we've created the script. Oh, by the way, where is that script? So let me click on Assets. There it is. I want that to be located inside of my scripts folder that I formerly created. So what I'll do is I'll just take this guy and I'll drag it and drop it right into scripts. So now if I double click into the scripts folder, or if I could just click on scripts folder over here, you can see that the rotator script is here. Now if I click on that, here's a preview of what the script looks like. There's nothing in it. So let's go ahead and affect it by double clicking on this guy, and that's going to take me into Visual Studio Community. And I already have the tab for my previous script, the player controller script. Here's the tab for the new script that we're going to be affecting. By the way, I want some more screen real estate, so I don't want this toolbox right here. I think I'm going to minimize this, and you'll see this little button over here where it says auto hide. If I click that, you'll see that it puts it on the left hand side. If I hover on top of it, I have this toolbox. If I click on it, and if I click on this guy over here, it will dock it into its position. So go ahead and auto hide this. If you accidentally click the X, which I don't want you to do, if you accidentally click the X, it's going to close that panel so you don't have the toolbox. I think we can bring that back. Let's see here. Here it is. View, Pads, and here's the toolbox. So if I click on the toolbox, now you can see this again. So we're going to need this in the future. All you have to do is just click this guy over here, Dock, and then you click this guy over here again, Auto Hide, and that's just simply going to put it on the left-hand side. All right, at this point, if there is a function that you are not going to be using, you can simply delete it by selecting it. Say, for example, we're not going to be using the start function. So I'm going to select it and press delete on the keyboard and get rid of that function. We are going to be using the update function. And so the update function, as you'll recall here, it says update is called once per frame. Well, that's what I want to do here. So in the update function, I'm going to type the following, because remember what we're trying to do. We are trying to get this cube to spin at a certain rate. All right, well, if you want to affect it, if you want to physically affect that particular cube, then what you're doing is you are affecting its transform. Now, how do you want to affect it? Well, I want to affect its rotation. So we're going to call this guy over here rotate, and you see over here it says applies a rotation of Euler angles .z degrees around the z-axis, the x-axis, and the y-axis. Translation, hey, we want to spin this thing. We want to spin it a certain way. Now, how are we going to spin this? All right, I'm going to enter a parentheses, and you'll see that one of the things that I can do is to enter a vector 3. Now, a vector 3 is just simply a way of modifying the 3 dimensions of our particular cube. And so a vector 3 would look like this. We'll say new vector 3, and then within parentheses I need to enter the x, y, and z axis parameters of how I want to affect the rotation of our cube. So let's say among the x-axis I want to rotate 15 degrees, 30 degrees for the y-axis, comma 45 degrees for the z-axis. Those are the 3 components that make up a vector 3. A vector 2 would affect a 2D object. A vector 1, or just a vector, would affect a one-dimensional object. Well, since we're dealing with a cube, that's why we have to create this vector 3, which is affecting a 3-dimensional object. Now, I want this thing to be frame independent in terms of its rotation. So just accept for right now that one of the things that we have to do to make this thing frame independent, because on a fast computer, wow, you're able to operate at, let's say, 120 frames per second. Your eye sees motion, continuous motion at 30 frames per second. But some of your computers are going to be really, really fast, so you maybe have 120 FPS, 120 frames per second. Other computers are going to be displaying it at maybe 30 frames per second. I don't want this rotation to be based on frames. I want it to be independent of frames. So what we'll do is we'll say time dot delta time, and you'll notice over here it says the time in seconds it took to complete the last frame. This is basically a trick, and let's put a semicolon at the end. This is basically a trick to make it so that your rotation is frame independent. Let's see the effect of our code on our game. So I'm going to switch back over here to Unity, and if I enter into play mode or run mode, Hey, nothing's happening. The reason why nothing is happening is because I forgot to save. So if I click File and then Save, now that the code has been saved, let's go back over here to Unity, and now let's see what happens when I run the game. Ah, there we go. Very nice. So we see the cube spinning. Beautiful. I like the way that that looks. So I'm going to get out of this game mode, and let me switch back over here to Visual Studio. Actually, sorry about that. Let's switch back over here to Unity, because what I want to do is to take the pickup and create what's called a prefab and then place several of those around where the player is. Let me just remind you what's happening here. The player, let me activate that, is right here in the middle. Let me deactivate it. What I want to do is I want to take a bunch of these pickups and place them around the player so that the sphere has to roll around and pick up as many of these spinning cubes. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is using my two fingers on my trackpad, and I'm going to scroll down. And in fact, let's see, I think it's this guy right here, rotation tool. So let me click this guy over here. And I think if I press Alt on my keyboard and then I'm using my trackpad, I'm holding the trackpad down and I'm spinning it around, as you can see. And now I'm going to let go of that and use my two fingers to scroll down. With this guy still selected, I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard, and I can rotate this around. And basically it is rotating my perspective around, so to try to get a top-down view. And let me scroll down a little bit. I don't think I need all this space over here, and I want more screen real estate, so I'm going to move this thing down. Can I move it down even further? No, they won't let me move it down any further than that. That's fine. I think I have enough to see that what I'm going to do is take that pickup and place several of these around the sphere. Now, what I'm not going to do is I am not going to be copying and pasting them. I'm not going to take this guy and just simply copy and paste it. What I'll do is I'll create a prefab. Now, a prefab, you can think of that as if it were a class. What is a class? A class is an abstract. It's when you close your eyes and you imagine, here's what this new house is going to look like that I'm going to design. It's got the front door here, it's got the garage here, the chimney here, the two windows, blah, blah, blah. Now, you put that down on a piece of paper, right, called a blueprint. That's your abstract, that's your class. And when you give that to someone who's going to construct your class, they actually instantiate an object. In other words, they create a house. We call that instantiation. Create, instantiation. You can think of those as synonyms. What I want to do is I want to say, let's create this thing, this idea called pickup, which is a rotating cube. Then let me instantiate objects of that pickup and place them around on my screen. So that's the idea of a class. That's the idea of making it so that I can multiply it around the screen. So the first thing we're going to do is in the project area, you'll see that I don't have a prefabs folder, and I'd like to create that. So what I'll do is I'll click on the create drop down, and let's create a folder. And so let's scroll. Oh, actually, it's at the top. There it is, folder. And I'll type the word prefabs. Make sure that you're typing it exactly like this, capital P, everything else located, plural. I want the prefabs folder not to be inside of the scripts folder. What I should have done is I should have clicked assets, and then I should have clicked folder, so that it would create a folder inside of the assets folder, but that's okay, no biggie. Here's the scripts folder, here's the prefabs folder. I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to drag and drop it right over here where it says assets, then let go, and you can see now that I have a prefabs folder that is directly underneath the assets folder. At this point, I want you to take the pickup object inside of the hierarchy panel, and I want you to drag and drop that into prefabs. So I'm going to hover on top of this, click, hold down my button on my trackpad, and then drag and drop it directly on top of prefabs. So now with prefabs selected, you'll see the pickup inside of that folder. At this point, I want to create an empty game object. So in the hierarchy panel, click the create button and click create empty. And you'll see that a game object is created. Well, a game object is exactly that, just something that we have on our screen that we can apply um, all kinds of physics to, or maybe apply sprites to. There's all kinds of stuff that we can do with game objects. In this case, what I want to do is I want to make this guy a parent and this guy a child. I want to create a bunch of pickups, yeah, that's right. I want to create a bunch of pickups inside of a particular game object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this one more time so that I can change the text, and specifically I'm going to type in the word pickups like that. That will be my parent. The pickups are going to have a bunch of pick up individual objects. So what I'll do is I'll take this guy pick up and I'm going to drag and drop that. So let me click, hold down, and let me drag that right into pickups. Actually, I didn't drag it inside of it, I dragged it underneath it. Let me put it right on top like that. There we go. And so now you can see that the pickup object is inside of this new game object that I just created called pickups. And the goal is to create a bunch of these individual pickup items and to place them around the screen. Now, the one thing I forgot to do is I forgot to select the origin, make sure that this thing is located at the origin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select pickups, and in the inspector, specifically in transform, I'm going to click this gear and then select reset. And then over here where it says pickup, I want to make sure that that's also, well, actually I already did that. I already put that in its origin originally. And then I changed the rotation and I changed the scale. So that's fine. I wanted it to look like that. But for the pickups, just make sure that you click this guy over here and then click reset to place it at the origin. Okay, at this point, I want to duplicate the pickup to place them around the screen. You'll notice that if I click edit, I have the option to duplicate. Since I'm on a Macintosh, this says Command D, and then on a PC, this would say Control D. So if I were to duplicate, and now you can't see the effect because it's basically placing the duplicate one on top of the other. So what I'll do is I'll click this button over here, which allows me to move the items around, and I'm going to use this arrow to drag the item over here, and if I wanted to I could drag it up like this. And what I'm trying to do is I'm basically trying to place them um, around the sphere that is not visible right now on the screen, my player, but I'm trying to place them around like that. Let me select the pickup, and again I'll use the arrow and I'll place that over here. In fact, if I select the player, and let me just go ahead and activate that so that I can kind of have a reference of where I'm going to be placing the pickups around. And the idea is to place 12 of these all around, so we have like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, so forth and so on. So again, what I'll do is I'll just select this guy, and let me use the keyboard shortcut Command D, and then I'll use these arrows. And the nice thing about the arrows is that they give me the opportunity to move them perfectly on top of that plane. You'll see that we are in global mode. We are not in local mode, which, boy, that changes it, changes how we are moving this. Let me undo, Control Z. I'm going to go back into this global mode. This is how I want to be moving the cubes around. All right, so let me go back over here and let me duplicate that. I'm sorry. Place this over here. Place this over here. And maybe a little bit closer to the sphere, something like that. And I'm just going to continue to duplicate these items and place them at the various locations as if I were working on a clock. So this guy over here is going to be 4 o'clock. That's at 5, that's at 6. And let's go ahead and work on these over here. So I select this guy and then duplicate. Place this guy at 1 o'clock. Looks pretty good. And I want that guy, duplicate, and let's place this at 2 o'clock. Looks pretty good. And now I'm going to work on the pickups over here. So I guess I could just take this guy over here. Again, whoops, sorry. I double clicked on that so it focused in on that. I don't want to focus in on that. In fact, maybe I should just select the player, click F on my key. Whoops, sorry. Let me move the mouse on top of here, then press F. So it makes that in the center, focuses in on that. And then I'll select this guy over here, Command D, and then I'll Move this guy around here. Something like that. Again, Command D so I can duplicate. Again, I'm just using my trackpad. You could use your mouse, just moving these around. Let me select this guy over here, Command D, and move this into position 11 o'clock, something like that. And then finally, Command D, and let's move this into the 10 o'clock position, and move that up a little bit. That looks pretty good. All right, let's see what happens in game mode. Now, if I click on the game tab, I can see what it looks like from my current camera perspective, but and we're going to have to change that. But let's see what happens when I run this thing. Okay, it looks good. We have our cubes that are rotating. And we're going to have to change the camera perspective, obviously. But the good thing is that all of our pickups are rotating simultaneously, and that's going to give us something attractive to capture with our player. So let me get out of the game mode. At this point, I want to change the colors of the pickups to yellow. I should say the color of the pickups to yellow. So why don't I just do this? I'll just, actually, before I select this, really I need to create another color, and that means generating another material. I already have, as you can see here when I click on the material folder, I already have the material here. If I select that, and I'm going to hit Command D for duplicate on the PC, I think you would do Control D. And I'll just select this text one more time, and I'll just type in the word pickup. That'll be my pickup material. And I don't want blue, I want yellow. So over here in the inspector, you'll see where it says albedo. Here's the color picker. If I click on this guy, it's going to show me this color panel. And I want a yellowish color. So first of all, I think I'm going to click over here, and then I'll just drag and drop this guy to something like that. That's the color it's going to change to. Select whatever version of yellow that you want, or you could mess around with the sliders if you want. And once you have that, so let's say, yeah, I want that color right there. As you can see, it's yellow over here. So I'll go ahead and close the color panel. And what I want to do is I want to take that and I want to drag and drop it on top of one of these pickups. So I can take this guy and I can drag it and drop it on top of this pickup, say for example. So you notice that this pickup changes. What was that? Was that pickup 1? Yeah, that was pickup 1. You can see that that color changes, but I don't want it to just apply to this pickup alone. I want it to apply to all of these. Well, because all of these are part of a prefab that we're calling pickup, notice that I see over here where it says inspector, prefab, you'll see the apply button. When you click on the apply button, now you see that it applies to all of those individual pickup items which are part of the prefab. So the prefab, which is pickup, that is that's going to be the parent, right? Pickups, that's the parent. And all of these, once I affect one, I affect all the children. If I affect the parent, I affect the children. So that's what the beauty is of working with prefabs. When I clicked apply, it applied it to all the individual children. And in fact, I all want them to be yellow. So if I run the game, and you can see that all of the pickups are spinning around yellow. So let me stop running the game. At this point, I want to place walls. Well, not at this point. I really need to affect the game camera because that is not a good angle right there. So what I'll do is I'll select the main camera. Here we go. And so I see a little tiny preview of the camera and its perspective, and then this is my scene view. This is where I'm doing all my design work. The camera is selected, as you can see over here. So the first thing is the camera needs to be lifted up. So do you see that arrow right here? I'm going to grab that arrow so I can move the camera up. Now I think if I click this guy over here, I'm going to hold Alt on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click and move around here. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to move the scene around. I should have clicked this guy, sorry. And then I'm holding Alt, and then I'm holding down my button on my trackpad, and then I'm moving this around. So I can, again, change the perspective that I'm looking at the game view from actually I'm looking at the game from my scene view. But let me select the camera again, as you can see here, and with the camera selected, I can select this tool over here, and now you can see more clearly that this is the button This is the arrow that is used to drag and drop the camera up and down. Now if I drag it too far up, as you can see here, I won't be able to see the bottom part, and I'm doing that deliberately because then let me go ahead and select this guy over here. This is the rotation tool, and you see that I have some of these different circles that I can select, and I think it's, let's see, is it this one right here? Let's see what happens. Maybe it's this one right here. Right there. Let's see if I drag and drop that. Nope, you can see that that's not the correct rotation I want, so let me Control Z. How about this guy right here? Is it this one? Nope, it's not that. Yeah, that's doing all kinds of crazy stuff, so let me Control Z here. I think what I need to do is I need to get a better perspective of the camera. So I think I'm going to select this guy over here, hold down the Alt button, and see if I can go around to something like this. And then let me go ahead and select this rotation tool. And is it that red one right there? Let's see here. Yeah, that's it. So I grabbed that red circle, and now if I move it up and down, you can see that I get a better perspective of what the board looks like. So I think I'm going to almost want a complete top down. So you see how much I rotated that. I'll select this guy over here. I'm going to take that blue arrow and move it like this, and then I'm going to take that green arrow and move it up. Maybe that's too much. Something, you just play around with it however you want your game to look like. And I'm trying to get a little bit of a top-down view. I like that. Let's see what it looks like when I click on the Game tab. I like that because I'm going to place a wall eventually over here, here. I'll place a wall down here at the bottom. I can make these pickups. I can move them apart a little bit more if I'd like, but play around with however you want the camera to be positioned by selecting the main camera. And then let me zoom out a little bit. Then you select any one of these tools to move it. You could select the rotation tool. You can also drag and drop this, right? So that if you were to change this by dragging and dropping over here, you see the effect that it has on the camera preview. Whatever you want. Looks like I'm going to settle on what? Let's see. Let me just type in 75, and let's see, what is the position based on that? So my eyes are over here. I'm trying to look at the camera preview. I think that's pretty good right there, say for example. At this point, I want to create an empty object, an empty game object. So I'm going to click on Create, and then it says Create Empty. And here's the game object. First of all, let me make sure that the origin is set to 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to click over here where it says Transform to Reset. All right, so that's going to move it down here to the middle. And I'm going to click once, click twice where it says Game Object. And I'll type in Walls. Press Enter on the keyboard. The next thing to do is to create a 3D cube. So I'll click Create in the hierarchy. I'm going to click the Create drop down, go to 3D Object, and then click on Cube. With the cube selected, let me make sure that it's centered. So Transform, click the gear, click Reset to make sure that we move it to its origin. And instead of cube, I'm going to type West Wall, say for example. I want this to be a child of a parent called Wall, so I'll just drag and drop it on top of that. Looks good. And then I have over here West Wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that arrow and I'm going to move the wall over here, and that needs to be lifted up a little bit. Let me press F on the keyboard so I can zoom in. I don't have to zoom in that much. That needs to be raised up a little bit. So let's see, I think it was 0.5 on the x-axis if I did that. Yep, so if I type in 0.5 on the y-axis rather, that's going to lift it up. Need to stretch this a little bit, need to move this around a little bit. So if I click on this guy over here, the hand tool, hold down Alt on my keyboard, and then I'm going to just simply move my mouse, click my mouse button down. For me, I'm holding down the trackpad and using the trackpad to rotate this thing around. Then I'm going to click this guy over here, which allows me to move, and I'll move this over here right to the edge. And as you can see, I'm not being so careful here that it has to be exactly on the edge. I'm just eyeballing it. Now, the one thing that I am noticing is that obviously this thing is not tall enough, it's not wide enough. Well, I can fool around with those parameters using this guy over here, the scale tool. So what happens if I drag this red button Yeah, that looks nice. So I'm dragging that, and I'm going to go all the way to the edge over here. Let's see if that's right. And let me just rotate this around. So I'll select the hand and hold the Alt button down, and yeah, that's looking pretty good. And let me just move this around here. I like that. Okay, it doesn't have to go all the way to the edge because I'm going to place another wall over here that's going to overlap this guy. So I'm okay with that. And I'm using my trackpad now to move around. So for me, I just hold down 3 fingers on my trackpad. You can just simply use your mouse, click, drag around to see what that looks like. It's not exactly on the edge. You know, if I were really picky about that, I could reselect this and select the west wall, and then I could go over here and let's see here, let me go back over here so that I can actually see the tool. So I'll select this and then select this guy over here, and then maybe make it just a little bit bigger. In fact, what is the numeric value? It looks like maybe I should just type in 20. Let's see what happens if I type in 20. So let me erase all this stuff and type in 20, and I think that may have actually made it so that it is exactly wide enough here to let's see here, to go all the way to the edge. Yep, that looks pretty good. Maybe I don't want this thing to be so wide in this direction. So let's see what happens here. If I take that blue item and do this, and you can see the effect that it has over here. Maybe I want the wall to be 0.3. So let's see here. If I type in 0.3 on the Z-axis, I like that. That looks pretty good. Now, obviously, I can make this thing a little taller. So if I can take that green handle and move that up and down like this, maybe I want this thing to be, let's say, 1.5. So over here, we'll make that 1.5. Enter. Let me click the hand, and let's see what we've got here. I like that. It looks good, but I want to make that so that it is, more on this edge, and it looks like I'm, dipping a little bit below the plane a little bit. All that stuff can be rectified. All I have to do here is just select this guy over here, and then I'm going to drag this up just a little bit, and if I drag it up to right there, you can see the effect. It looks like maybe that's supposed to be 0.75. 0.75. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then I'm going to take this blue handle and move this over here like this. Maybe that's supposed to be 9.75. I shouldn't say supposed to be. I mean, it's whatever you want. As long as you are moving it so that it is really close to the edge, I think you're fine. I'm using these numbers, or I could use the arrows. However you want to do it, that's fine. Okay, I like that. That's cool. And so let me see if I can back out a little bit here. So use my trackpad. I'm using 2 fingers right now to. I think you would have to use your mouse in order to the mouse wheel, that is, to move to the left or to the right, or to zoom in and zoom out, I should say. All right, let me take that wall. I'm going to duplicate it. So Command D for me on the Mac. For you on the PC, that'll be Control D. And I'm going to select this once, select it again, and change the wording to East Wall. So with the East Wall selected, I'll select the Move tool, and let's go all the way over here and move it on this side. I'm kind of picky. I'd like to take a look at this side over here to see what it looks like. It looks like there's just a little bit of blue right there. And if I move it really close like that, you can see the effect on the Z-axis right here. Let's see what happens if I say 9.9. So negative 9.9. That looks pretty good. All right, let me hold down Alt, and I'm going to use my mouse to rotate this around. Let me now create a north and also a south wall. So it doesn't matter which one I select. I'll take the east wall. Command D on the Mac for duplicate, and Control C for you on the PC. Let's do the north wall first. North wall, that's fine. I'll just move this over here like this. Now I have to rotate this, obviously, 90 degrees. Let's see what happens if I do that with the x-axis value. Nope, that's not right. So let me Control Z with this guy over here. Yep, that's it. So if I either type in 90 or negative 90, that should do it. So I'll get rid of this, type in 90, press enter, and so now I've rotated this. I'm still using the Move tool, so I can use these arrows and something like that, and I can't really grab that red arrow, so I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard and then use the mouse to move this around. Specifically, I want to take that and move it to something like this. Now, if I'm really picky, I'd want to see what it looks like behind, and I am picky, so let me go ahead and hold down Alt on the keyboard so I can zoom in and zoom out and rotate and see what that looks like over here. That's not good. This is not good. It should be something like, I don't know, something like that. That looks pretty good. Let me zoom in. Numerically, if I wanted to refine what that is, it looks like I'm changing the x-axis. I see these numbers change when I'm moving this handle around, and it could very well be that's supposed to be 9.8. Let's see, 9.8. Enter. That looks good. Actually, you know what? I think I do see a little bit of, I don't know, there's like a little edge right here. So how about 9.9? 9.9. Well, that's not good either because I see a little bit of an extra edge over here. So how about 9.85? I think that's it. Again, I'm being really picky. You don't have to be so picky. Let's take this wall, the north wall, selected, Command D, and that's going to be my south wall. So let's rename this by taking away the current verbiage and typing in south wall. And then I could take that red handle, move this all the way over here, approximately to there. I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard, and I'm just rotating this around. Now I'm using my trackpad. You guys are going to have to use your mouse. You're holding down Alt. You're probably holding down your left mouse button and then moving the mouse around so you can move this around, as you can see over here. I don't know, something like that. Let's see what this vantage point looks like, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You'll do the same thing with your mouse. I'm using 2 fingers on my trackpad on a Mac. And let's see, if I take that arrow and I go down just a little bit more, that looks pretty good. It looks like, I think if I went to 9.85, negative 9.85, press enter, it's going to be right there, right on the money. It looks good. I like it. Hold Alt, and I'm using my trackpad. You can use your mouse, just repositioning so I can see what it looks like. Again, I'm in scene view. In the game view, this is what it's going to look like. Scene view, this is for me to design, to move things around. All right, let's see what happens. Remember, your player should be activated. If it's not activated, you're not going to see it in the middle. So you want to make sure with your player to make sure that that's activated. All right, let's see what happens. So I'm going to run the game. Here we go. And I'm going to use my arrows, and sure enough, I bump into these pickups. That's good. Eventually, when I touch them, they're going to disappear. We'll work on the code on that in just a bit. Right now, they're just physics objects, so the ball bounces. Let's see if the ball bounces on the wall. Boom, good. And let me go to the other walls. Bam, nice. And I can't see the top wall, so maybe I should zoom back on the camera a little bit so that I can see those walls. So let me stop running the game and select the main camera, and I have a little preview right here, and I'm going to zoom out. So let's see if I can lift it up a little bit. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to use my 2-finger scroll button so I can zoom out a little bit. Therefore, I can mess around with these buttons a little bit. I think that looks okay right there. Let's see what happens. Play the game. After you've positioned your camera, let's move the ball around. So let's see if I can hit the north wall. So I'm going to hit the up arrow, and I could see the ball has hit the north wall. Good. And now let me hit the south wall. Yeah, that's good. I don't have to completely see the south wall. The fact that it's bouncing, I'm okay with that. If you don't like it, again, just position the camera however you want so that you can see the ball at all modes. I could take these items, these cubes, and I could move them out, spread them out a little bit. I don't even have to place them in a circle. I can place them however I want, randomly position this guy over here and this one over here and so forth and so on. You can move them around, wherever you would like. But right now, you know now how to create the wall game object and then the various walls over here. And those are physics objects, and so the ball is going to interact with them. And it's just going to prevent the ball from rolling off into down infinity, and it's going to keep the ball inside of our arena.